Hello, it's from Ram Nerds. Welcome to another Ram Rant. So, just as going up, a Let's Play I've been doing of the Turing Test will have now been finished being released. It's a game I played some time ago when you see this, but I decided to give sort of my final thoughts / almost semi-review of it after I completed the game. I talked a bit on the podcast, but I wanted to get a little bit more depth of the stuff I couldn't talk about for spoiler reasons. So I wanted to just give a little bit of a game, background of the game, what it is, so forth, and give some final thoughts on it. This is going to be a spoiler video, so if there's anything in that podcast, anything in the game that you don't want spoiled, turn off now, because I will reveal the very end of the game and I will talk about the end of the game. There will be nothing off limits, so that's just a warning for you guys. So, Turing Test. So, I think overall I really enjoyed the Turing Test. As a game, I really liked it. The basic elements of the game is it's a first-person puzzler game. You wake up in this orbiting space station. You play a character called Ava, and you're working up by this Tom, who's this AI of the space station and also the ground station, and he's also can have like little robots and cameras. And basically, he wakes you up because he's lost control of the ground crew, and he wants you to go down, investigate, and find out what happened. So you start the game, you go investigate, and you find out what happens. If you've played the Portal, you've played the task principle. This is nothing new. It works very similar in those vein. That's not to say a bad thing, because obviously you could say about any first-person shooter, since like when Marathon was released many years ago, that basically everything that came after was just copying that, and they're all basically the same. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it definitely really heavily riffs off that idea. Disembodied voice guiding you through a facility. I mean, it's even an AI, like in Portal. You have a series of testing chambers you go through, but you also have the philosophical debate that you have in the Talos Principle regards AI. What is AI? I mean, it's actually in the same debate, because Talos Principle is all about what is AI. Can some machine be conscious? Can we define consciousness? Where's the boundary between human consciousness and non-human consciousness? That's the whole idea. And Turing Test treads very similar ground. It feels almost like it does feel like someone's got their ideas from the Talos Principle. It's heavy from Penultimate Test. It's got the same sort of methodology of them, where you go through chamber after chamber after chamber, gradually progressing. You have a gun, but you don't fire portals. What you do in this game is you have these little energy balls, and you use these energy balls and basically use to open doors. And that's the main mechanic. You basically have a gun that can hold 3 of them, so basically you suck a ball out of a socket, and that could either be just a holding socket, or it could be one that you actually power something up. You suck it out and it holds in the gun. You can hold up to 3, but they work on a first in, last out principle. So basically the first one that goes in, you then suck up another one. Sorry, last in, first out, that's the one. Last in, first out. So basically if you suck, say, 2 blue balls and a green ball, the green ball has to go out first. So you have to be a little bit careful what you do. You have to sort of think about how best to manage to complete your ball management, as it were, to make things work. Like I said, there's several types of energy balls. You've got a basic one which simply just powers something up. You've got ones that are like alternate power. They basically will power up they'll be on, then they're off, then they're on, then they're off. So they're almost like a timing circuit, like a little switch, as it were, but repeating. There's 2 versions of that, which are opposite each other. So you have to sort of do like clever sort of, if you require they'll literally work with the exact opposite of each other. When one's on, the other's off, and vice versa. So if you want a door that's powered up with 2 of them, and these 2 balls to power up, if you use one each of this type, it won't work, because there'll always be one off, so it doesn't work. There's also what I call the time delay, which is one that when you put it in, actually basically delays for a few seconds, or will only power for a few seconds before it finally shuts down. So what do you do with these balls? So I mentioned you open doors, but you also use some other things. So you might say, for example, power up a magnet, which you use to pick things up. And the things tend to narratively be a metal box with a ball built into it, which you can't remove. So there's also these mailboxes that have like the energy balls built in that you can like plug into the receptacles in the wall, and there are so not every receptacle will take it, only certain ones, and when you plug them in, that basically then allows powering up of those rooms and doors and so forth. So from those basic mechanics, you then have things like, you can raise and lower ramps. You've got like energy bridges that you can sort of power up, and then when they're powered up, you can walk across them. When you just have no power, they collapse. You've got, as I mentioned, the magnets. You've got things that can be rotated, like little lifts and stuff can be rotated. You've got fold-out walkways, which are similar to the energy walkways. They actually fold out. And that's basically how the game progresses for the most part of the game. It isn't a hard game. The puzzles aren't complicated at all. Possibly that's because I've played the likes of Portal and Task Principle, that I know the tricks. I know how these sort of games will run and play. Maybe that's simply a case of that I know what to look for. But this game won't tax most people. There are a few puzzles in there that make you go, And the hard puzzles do come quite late on. But a bit too late. It does feel like you go through quite a lot of easy stuff, like the first 2/3 of the game, before it actually throws something hard at you. The trouble about it is that there are sometimes the mechanics it introduces are a little bit. It doesn't teach you necessarily how things work. It doesn't actually sort of demonstrate them to you very often. I know you could say it's due to experimentation, but if you're never taught a certain thing you can do, it won't work. So let me give you an example. About halfway through the game, when we're now starting getting into the spoilers, you develop the ability to not just be in control of Ava. You can basically leave Ava and go into one of Tom's cameras where you can watch her, and you can also jump into these little robots which you can drive about. Now there's this one puzzle, I think puzzle 56, and basically there's a room, and the room's controlled by a door, and long story short, either you or Robert can be in the room. You can't have you both in there. Due to the way that the power balls are set up, you can't both be in there. However, there's a power ball in the room that you need to get out, but you can't put it out because you basically almost need both sides of you in there at the same time. So how do you get out? Well, you put the robot in the room, and basically you pull the power ball, and then you can turn the robot so its back's facing like this window, and you can then pull the power ball out of the back of the robot. That is something that the game never, ever, ever, ever taught you. It doesn't show you can do that. You don't know. It was by sheer luck that I found that. It wasn't through clever deduction. It wasn't through working it out. It wasn't through sort of logical reasoning. It was simply a case of luck. And walking around this room and saying, there's an energy ball in the back of that robot. I wonder if I can zap it. And I could. That, to me, is a sign of teaching you bad mechanics. They could have taught you that. They could have had like a robot trapped where it couldn't rotate, but you could see an energy ball and you had to use it as a storage point. That would then make sense because you're being taught how to use the mechanic. It doesn't do that. But by the by, you will figure it out. That was probably the big frustration I did have when I played it. Of like, oh come on, I can figure this out. This is ridiculous. So let's move on from this. I could have done this. You didn't need to faff around doing that. It would have been nice actually, because they could have done a lot more with that there. When you basically switch between the robot Ava and the cameras, you are in control of that camera, you're in a robot, and Ava just stands there doing nothing. It would have been nice if there's a way that you could perhaps sort of tell Ava or even the robot to do something, and it relied on both you and yourself. You saw working with yourself to achieve puzzles, a bit like how Task Principle has later on these time recording machines. So basically, you can record a series of motions with this time, and then you go back and you can play them back, and then your recording of you goes off and does these things, and then you can play with your recording, so you can sort of like team up with yourself. That's a really neat concept. And Turing Test could have done something similar, but I felt like it missed out. Whether it's not possible to do it, it just felt like they missed out of it. Some of the puzzles in it aren't really puzzles. They're very early on. There's these special rooms basically in the game. There's these special rooms that are designed to be extra tough. They call them optional rooms, and they are pretty darn tough. Some of them actually do rely on you knowing a bit of basics of computer science. Basically, there's one room which is basically you need to recognise logic symbols. Now, you probably would figure it out by yourself if you weren't there. You probably would trig what those symbols mean eventually, but I recognise them because I've dealt with computer science, I've done com sci, so I know bits and pieces about something. But I recognise these symbols straight away when I saw them. But a lot of people, I imagine, will go, I have no idea, and would rely on a YouTube video to tell them how to do it, because it's not. It doesn't really. It throws you right in the deep end. It doesn't really. Something doesn't teach you, and it's only in that one room. The whole game, nothing about it. I mean, to be fair, that's how all the optional rooms work. They've got a mechanic in it that you won't see elsewhere. So there's rooms which, like for example, have like a burglar alarm in them, which means if they move too fast, the alarm goes off and it shuts power down, which drops like a bridge on you, or sort of drops a bridge from beneath you. So you have to walk past it slowly. That's neat, that's really neat, it does that, but you think, well, it's a bit wasted because I've not used a mechanic anywhere else. There's another one, there's a security camera that if it sees you, it will, again, close the door and stop you moving through it. So you have to block the security camera. Again, neat, that's really clever, that's nice, I like that sort of thing, that works well, but it doesn't show you that. And that's a real disappointment. It's like, come on guys, you could, you've got these mechanics here, why don't we use them a bit more? There's some interesting stuff they do in those. But right, going back to the first optional room, you go in there, you're confronted by a grid, and I've got memory here. I think it was six sort of slots wide, down by 5 slots wide of like energy ball receptacles. And I'm in there, and the first thing I'm thinking is, there's a solution to this somewhere. There's got to be a clue that tells me where, because basically you have 2 energy balls, you have to put them somewhere to unlock the door. And Millie Dunn does say, perhaps we can't solve this now, but to me that's just sort of like, that doesn't sound like a clue saying, oh, you have to play this game again and do it later. Because you can't go back to rooms. That was like oh, by the way, it felt more like a challenge, like saying, oh, let's just give up now. That's not what I do, I don't give up like that. So I decided to, in the end, I must admit, initially I did skip it, because I sort of couldn't see how you meant to do it, and I didn't realise at the time you couldn't go back, so I did skip it. Later on I reloaded that level, went back into it and decided, right, I want to get through this. And you basically have to shoot these energy balls in the form of a combination lock. You basically have to pick the 2 receptacles out of this 5x6 grid, so out of 30, that will open the door. I brute forced my way in. I looked around the room for any clue as to what to do. Some logical clues. I looked for everything, nothing. And I brute forced my way in. It turns out there is no logical way to work out. There's no way you can work out through normal puzzle logic to work out. Instead, later on, you'll come across a picture which shows you the room and shows you the answer. Now, an entire game is based around about you being able to use logical deduction and sort of cunning to work your way through these situations. Throwing stuff like that at you is just bad form. It's to be ruin the whole point of, oh, you need to actually just look for the answer later on. That to me is no longer a puzzle at that point. It's not the sort. The game's took a strange twist as to how it works. That one room, and it thinks it's being very clever about it. It's not. It's a silly idea. It doesn't make sense at all why it works like that. So those puzzles aren't really a puzzle, and that was quite disappointing at that. But overall, I mean, I said the puzzles are quite easy to early on. They get a bit late. Overall, I quite enjoyed what I was doing. I mean, it took me about 4 or 5 hours to go through it, and I did enjoy what I was doing. And I said, you do figure it out. There's nothing majorly hard in between it. So I want to move a bit onto the story of the game and what I think of it. So there we are into proper spoiler territory here. So the basic premise of why you've gone down there, and when you find out the background, what's gone on. Basically, the ground crew in the ice of Europa discovered this bacteria. I think it was a bacteria or a virus. One or the other. I know they're very different things, but one or the other. And they discover that it can repair human cells, and literally just keeps repairing them. So if you've got so basically, you won't die of old age. You won't die of. You'll live forever, effectively, in theory. Bear in mind, this is based on like 2-3 weeks' work and research. They've come to this conclusion that you're just going to live forever. Bit of dodgy science there, to my mind. It's that you wouldn't come to that conclusion straight away. I mean, you do some more tests first before, and they deliberately they then infect themselves. It's like, well, why have you done that? Why have you deliberately done that? I will say, as far as it doesn't protect you against, like, accidental death. If you shoot yourself in the head, you're gone anyway, or you get trapped, you get crushed, you're dead. It can't do that, but it basically will keep you alive indefinitely. Tom on the space, as it were, because all those Toms are linked up. There's basically two versions of him, effectively, and at some point they get desynchronized from each other. They lose communication with each other, so you have like two of him running at once at some point. Although the game doesn't make any sort of feel, you don't have like two Toms talking to each other, probably because it just get confusing. He basically sees danger. He talks with his people at Europa head office, and they say you can't come back. That virus is just too dangerous to bring back into Earth. And so Tom stops them. He stops them trying to leave. When that all goes wrong, the crew eventually decide to try and basically rebel and hide from him. They remove these little tracker chips they've got, and they basically hide from him. And in doing so, they realise that they basically want to make sure that whoever finds them is a human. So to solve this problem, they set up these series of test rooms, and they are Turing tests. And now, if you don't know what Turing test is, basically it was a test. The idea is you have two computers. You have a person, and he talks to two people. One's a computer, one's a real person, and it's a conversation with them, but they don't know which is which. Now, that person who's having the conversation, after having this conversation for 4 minutes, has got to decide which person is real or not. And if a computer can fill that adjudicator that they are actually a human, then they've passed a Turing test. That's deemed to pass a Turing test. So far as I'm aware, nothing ever has passed it. I've heard some things come close. I mean, there's chatbots, for example, you can try out, which are meant to be quite good. I have, and generally you can quite quickly pick up if they're real or not. Well, when you go into they're not real. But you can quite quickly pick up. If you didn't, you would soon know that they weren't real. And to be fair, the biggest problem that I find that computer chatbots have is they can't follow a conversation. If you sort of keep talking about something that you've already said and sort of refer back to it, they can't track it. They can't, like a human, they can't think about it. They have to just sort of do a response. So I've never encountered a pretty decent chatbot in that regards. So, as the crew have done this building, Tom, so you basically have, there's basically two side stories to this. Is Tom actually a genuine AI? Is he just programmed response, or does he actually believe and have feelings and so forth? Tom thinks he does. And what we're going to do about this bacteria. Actually, two side stories. About halfway through, and this is what's big twist of the game, you discover that Tom has been controlling you. So basically, you actually play. When I said at the start, you play as Ava. You don't. You play as Tom, playing as Ava. So you're actually in control of Tom. You're just Tom throughout the whole game, and he controls Ava. Because at points where basically his controls reign back, and Ava will start going off by herself, and you'll start losing control. And this doesn't quite work out how this works with the Turing test. Because was Tom solving those puzzles, or was Ava solving those puzzles? Because if you're controlling Ava, who was solving those puzzles? Who was it? You or was it Tom? I didn't make that. That was a little bit. All I can assume is perhaps Tom sort of eased back his control and let Ava figure them out for that bit of time. That's why you develop the ability to jump between the robots and the cameras, because you're controlling Tom, and you know that you're controlling Tom. Basically, you can just sort of like switch your view between these various cameras and robots and so forth. And I find it ironic that in the game it's about the Turing test, they built that in so that Tom, you have to be able to do that in order to complete the puzzles. Like, well, guys, why did you do that? Doesn't really make sense, does it? Now that you built this Turing test, but you've put the abilities in for Tom to do his stuff as well. So that's the Tom side of it. And at the very end of the game, eventually Ava becomes free of your control, and she goes on. And this is where all the pitch battle begins, because Tom is firmly believed that this bacteria must not reach Earth. Ava and this lady Sarah, who's commander of this base, believe they want to get off the base. They're going to go home, and you basically have to make a decision whether you stop them, and you stop them by either shooting them or not shooting them. And they're trying to disable your mainframe. Quite why they needed Ava there is never explained. Perhaps because Ava's got some technical knowledge that the others didn't have. They didn't have to break it. They literally go and they start ripping things apart. So quite why they need her to disable Tom, I don't know. It doesn't really make it clear, and why I couldn't do it without her. And indeed, why Tom was offline, why they couldn't do it. But that brings me on to the bacteria itself, because to be honest, throughout the whole game, Tom was right. You develop bacteria that repair cells that you've only researched for 3 weeks, and you want to bring it back to Earth, and when it infects people, it's permanent. You can't unaffect people. God no. You cannot possibly consider doing that. That is probably one of the most stupidest decisions you can possibly make. Why on earth would you bring back such a dangerous bacteria to Earth? I mean, it's just stupid. I mean, Tom put so many good points across. Like, what if this affects a cancerous cell and it's going to keep repairing? Can we even treat it anymore? Can we do the information? What if it gets do you know how it's going to work on our child that's growing? Does it stop them? Does it keep them growing? Does it make them horrible deformities because it doesn't know what to do? It does. They have no idea, and they're ready to bring it straight back. These guys are terrible. Tom was perfectly in the right for trying to kill him, and I felt the whole game. And so when I had the position at the end where I had to try and shoot them, if there was a non-violent way to stop them, I would have done it. But there's only one way to stop them, that's to kill them, and which is exactly what I did. And I think in reality, if I had the choice, if it was just if these people can basically try and infect the Earth with a deadly bacterium. It might not be deadly, but you don't know that. Then it's got to go. They've got to be killed. You can't let that sort of thing escape into the ecosystem. It's just too darn dangerous. So I agree with everything that Tom did, to be honest. So what I was going to say. I'll say there's a few plot heads left hanging at the very end of the game. There's a team of 6 astronauts, including Ava. One gets killed. One returns to the ship. One is yourself, Ava, and Sarah. So 2 unaccounted for. It's never explained what happens to them. You find out about them, you hear voice calls, but it's never explained about what actually happened to these 2 people. Where have they gone? Why? What's their role in this, and what they have done differently about this? So that doesn't really make a lot of sense. I'll just mention about the characters in it. Tom, the character, is well written, but also brilliantly voiced. I haven't got the name of the actor in front of me. I should have looked up before I double record this, really. The actor who plays him does a cracking job playing him. He has the ability to, with only the slightest, he speaks the whole time through very deadpan, very monotone. But with the slightest inflection, he managed to turn for something that sounds very innocent to something very threatening. He can do it really brilliantly. There's not many else who can do that sort of just minor slight inflection, make a big change, and he does it fantastically. Ava's character isn't quite so well done. Voice acting is fine, but the main issue is that Ava's meant to be an engineer, yet throughout your journey, she's very ignorant of engineering topics. She asks questions that I knew the answer to, and I'm not an engineer, so by golly, she should have known the answer to these things. She asked some question about why couldn't we do this, why couldn't we do that? Well, come on, Ava, you're an engineer, you should know this sort of information. That's really stupid. I thought, where did you get this degree from? Did you just do an Allison's course online and that's your engineering degree? Did you actually, or did you lie in the exam? Because you don't sound like an engineer to me. So that's a little bit disappointing. I mean, I understand they need to have a reason for Ava to be up there, and you have to have a certain degree of ignorance for them to be able to explain the game to you. But I'm sure they could have found another role that would have explained why she's there. But I suppose they're tons of time by what logical option would they have, and so that just doesn't work very well. But overall, I mean, the thought is pretty good. So the storyline is interesting, but I'm not sure whose idea decided meant to come down on, and it feels like the game's pushing you into one. I think you feel like the whole point of the game's at the end, you want AI, so you decide to let him go, and I think that's the idea they're pushing, but in reality, you'd be stupid to let them go. So overall, I actually really although I've been critical on quite a few parts, I actually really liked the Turing Test. I found it fun. Interesting, it's got VR support. I haven't played it in VR because I haven't got a VR headset, but it has got VR support, and I'd be interested to see how it would work. So perhaps I might play it when I get one. I might play it again. But yeah, I really enjoyed Turing Test. You can watch it as well because I've done a whole let's play of it, pretty much every room and every puzzle, which will be on the YouTube channel you see now. There's 22 episodes in total, by all means, but they're all split into various areas you can watch and choose at your leisure. So please join that and watch that. If you've liked this video, please can you subscribe? Would you do us a grand favour of liking this video, which would be great, thank you. And also, if you'd like to subscribe, we do bi-weekly podcasts as well. Our next one is due this Friday coming up, so by all means join us there. Obviously, if you're watching this in the future, that may or may not be true, depending on which week it is. So, thank you very much for watching. I've been TheSuffolkRam. If you have any thoughts or feelings on this, please put so in the comments and I'll try and reply to them. So, very much for watching. I look forward to seeing you on other Ram Rant in the future. Until then, see you later.